Hello people, so my personal favourite version of Dracula will always be the 1958 one starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, to the point actually that I don't really watch any non-Hammer Dracula, but if you did ask me what I would like to see from a brand new modern take on it, I don't think my first response would be, let's do it in 3D and cast an ageing Rutger Hauer as Van Helsing. So before we get into it, a quick reminder that you'll find all my other Argento reviews in my Argento playlist, and there will be spoilers today. I'll also add that I didn't actually watch this film in 3D. I rented the film through the Google App Store. I imagine that if you wanted to watch this in 3D, you would have had to have done so during the initial theatrical run. Not that I could imagine said run went on for very long. Thankfully, though, there doesn't seem to be any lingering 3D effects in the version that I watched anyway. Sometimes with older 3D films, things like Friday the 13th Part 3, Jaws 3D, you can still see where the 3D used to be, and it's a little bit distracting. Your eyes hurt at certain points during the movie, I find. But with more modern films, they seem to have found ways to take that 3D stuff out now by the time you get to the home release, and that was the case here. I thought I would like this film more than most Argento fans because it's easy for me to believe that Argento fans who love his giallo might get to Dracula and think, oh, why the hell is he giving us this at this point? I don't want a gothic horror film. For me, though, personally, as someone who likes stuff like all the old Hammers and what have you, I've always looked at the back end of Argento's filmography and been quite intrigued by this movie, so I was wondering how I'd get on with it. Certainly all the story elements that I would expect to find in a retelling of Dracula are present and correct here. You know, you get Jonathan Harker going to work for Dracula, and then later on he makes way for Van Helsing to come in. Argento, though, has added another protagonist into the middle of Harker and Van Helsing. So after Harker, we get Harker's wife turning up and then Van Helsing. So the script feels a little bit like Inferno at times in that you get all these different heroes and heroines coming along. And I don't think this is one of the better things that Argento did to this to make it his own. I think most of the best stuff in Dracula 3D is to do with the technical side. I enjoyed a lot of the production design, costume design, at least for the first hour or so before the film starts to build to a more action-orientated crescendo. The film does have a very good period feel. I also enjoyed a lot of the music. The music is definitely the best thing about this film. I think it's some of the best Argento music that we've had for quite some time. Lots of good piano pieces, violin pieces. The film can't quite find its one signature piece that can repeat itself several times because it's a good tune. But I thought to myself during this that I might quite like to listen to the soundtrack for this film away from the movie, and I might just do that one of these days when I'm home working or something. Sadly, the worst part of this film is also something on the technical side. So clearly this film didn't have much of a special effects budget. It's not so noticeable during the first half of the film when things are quieter. There's the occasional stabbing maybe, but the film doesn't have any problems with that stuff. It's when we get to the second half that the film sort of runs aground because there are more complicated things to do by this juncture, and we're talking about burnings and vampires exploding into dust, slightly more complicated special effects. And it all culminates in this one moment where Asia Argento is meant to burn to death, and the effect for that, I would say, is the worst person on fire effect I have literally ever seen in my life. It is just hands down awful and embarrassing. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and been past the wine list and looked down it and thought to yourself, oh, this is a bit rich for my blood, and you end up picking like the cheapest wine just to keep the costs down, or maybe the second cheapest wine if you don't want to look like a cheapskate? When it came to this burning effect for Asia Argento, it's like somebody passed Dario a list of all the local pyrotechnic special effects companies, and he started at the top and thought, ooh, Fire and Light Industries, €3,000 a day, bit rich for my blood. And then he looked down to the next one that was €2,000, didn't like the sound of that either, and then he eventually just skipped to the bottom. Fire Effects Inc., €20 a day. Yeah, I think we'll go with that one, see how we get on. Sorry, my Italian accent is just absolutely terrible, but yeah, try looking up this burning Asia Argento on YouTube or something, because it's absolutely laughable. I think, by the way, my love affair with Asia Argento as an actress is definitely dimming by this point. This is the sixth film I've now seen her in a very short space of time. If you watch some of my earlier Argento reviews, I really did stick up for her in some of the films that she was in initially, things like Trauma and the Stendhal Syndrome. Even though I didn't like those films, I still stuck up for Asia, said that she had a certain type of charm as an actress. And even though that may still be the case, I found her a little bit of a distraction in this film, especially with her attempts to hide her Italian accent. I mean, I thought for something like this, a European-based film, she might fit into this as a European actress more so than something like Trauma, but that just wasn't the case at all. I think she's trying to say her lines in the most English way possible, but it's just not quite working for her. She can't hide that Italian inflection. You'd normally associate films like Dracula with countries that are more north in Europe, places like Germany, Romania, not so much Italy, I don't think. There's another female part in this film, Harker's wife, played by someone called Marta Gastini. Now, interestingly, this is a bigger part than the one Asia has. That's not normally the case. Normally, Dario gives the biggest female role to Asia if she's in the damn thing, but not this time. Now, I presumed that Harker's wife was being played by an English actress because she's so good, but to my surprise, I learned after the film that she's actually an Italian actress. She's just doing a much better job than Asia of hiding her heritage. Now, I'm not going to say that Marta's a better actress just because of that, because for all I know, this lady grew up in Romford. She just happens to be Italian. I don't know. But I was certainly more impressed by the performance of Marta Gastini than probably anybody else in the movie, maybe with the exception of Thomas Kretschmann playing Dracula, who's very good in that role. But by comparison, Asia Argento was decidedly mediocre, shall we say, and the final moment where she burns to death it's really, really bad, believe me. We haven't yet talked about Rutger Hauer as Van Helsing, which is just a woeful bit of casting for me. Maybe if the part had been more fully formed and wasn't just turning up for the past half an hour, and maybe if Rutger Hauer had been 10 years younger, maybe this could have worked somehow. But as it is, it's a bit uncomfortable, really. It feels like Hauer's just there to pick up a paycheck, whether he intended that or not. I imagine that this was very much a case of, oh, we can get Rutger Hauer, we've got to put him into the movie somewhere, give him Van Helsing, I'm sure he can make something of it. But because he only comes along in the final act, there's just no time for us to sort of connect with him and get to know him as a character. I did wonder, why would Argento leave it so long to introduce Van Helsing in this? It could be that he just wanted Asia Argento to have this huge part in the middle of the movie. It could also be that maybe they only had Rutger Hauer for a certain length of time. Sometimes that happens with, well-known actors. Their schedules are quite limited. Could also be that Argento realised that Rutger Hauer was no good as Van Helsing and just wanted to limit his time on screen. That is also a possibility, but given that this man is an absolute legend in my eyes, Rutger Hauer, and some of the roles he's done in the past, The Hitcher, Blade Runner, to see him now in his 60s, presumably, when this came out, it's a little bit sad. That there's a really bad moment in particular that I remember where Dracula's just punching the hell out of him. This is a 60-year-old guy. One punch should probably put him down, but he takes all these punches. It's like he's gone 3 rounds with Mike Tyson and then just stands up. Bit of blood on his face, but otherwise he's all right. And I thought to myself, yeah. And he talks in a really gruff way, Van Helsing, in this. It's like, yeah, I'm here to get Dracula. But Thomas Kretschmann as Dracula is exactly the same. He's kind of like, yeah, you get to work in my library, Mr. Harker. It's like all the characters have this manly, barely audible, gruff voice to them. And it's not just this film, the previous Argento film, Adrian Brody, exactly the same. I work alone and I'm going to get this cab driver. What is Argento's late career obsession with this type of way of speaking for the main lead roles? I don't know, it's kind of weird. There is one pretty decent character that I've not mentioned so far, a more minor character. So in the opening beats of the movie, this woman, she's off to meet her lover somewhere in a barn. This guy's married, sadly, so it's a little bit naughty what these two are up to, but I kind of got the impression looking at this character that she is maybe an all right person. She's just making a little bit of a mistake. We've all been there at various points. This woman is then killed by Dracula after she's had her tryst and she's turned into a vampire. For the rest of the movie, though, her defining characteristic seems to be that she's a little bit slutty. So it's like the process of vampirism has taken her one bad characteristic and made that pretty much the only thing that suddenly is of note about this person, but left all the good characteristics in her old self, sort of thing. I thought that was an interesting idea, that the process of vampirism will only take your bad characteristics forward, but generally the character is lost in the shuffle of Dario Argento scenes and Rutger Hauer scenes. On the whole, I can't say I liked the movie. I was enjoying it for a long time, though, at least until it got a little bit crazy and silly in the second half. At the halfway point of this movie, I was thinking possibly along the lines of going as high as 3.5 out of 5, but I just started to feel a bit bored as we got into the second hour, and certainly there's just all sorts of silliness and things that don't add up about the second half of this movie. And the best example of all is when Dracula turns into some kind of giant locust and bounds down a corridor to get someone. I thought to myself in that moment, what the hell? Is this some kind of leftover idea from Phenomena or something? I would love to get Christopher Lee's take on the locust version of Dracula, but sadly I suspect I never will. It's time then to get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I am going to give this movie. So we've got 1, 2 bloody axes out of 5. That is slightly less than average. There were times throughout this where I was having some semblance of fun, but overall this is just way too patchy an effort, I'm afraid. I've only got one more Argento film to review before I get to my Dario Argento rankings video. Dracula 3D will not be coming bottom. Argento has done worse films than this, but certainly I can't see this one getting anywhere near even, say, the top 10. So I'll be back soon. That one remaining film is a very recently released one. It's called Dark Glasses, and I'm looking forward to watching it and capping off this review series. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.